It's Graphics, thank God for another video, and welcome back to Black Ops 1. You know, every tier 2 perk in this game changes how you use your weapon. Harden helps you shoot through cover, Scout gives you more control with snipers, Sleight of Hand makes your weapons faster, Steady Aim improves your close range weapon handling, and Warlord allows you to build a stronger weapon class. So the problem is you can only choose one. Which tier 2 perk should you use? In this video, I'm breaking down what every perk does, the benefits of using each perk, how can you play without it, and describing the best situations where the perk is most useful. I'll be also answering the biggest question, are these perks worth using? If that sounds good to you, let's get into it. Now in the last video, we broke down every tier 1 perk. If you want to go check that one out, the link will be in the description. After breaking down all of the tier 1 perks, the main takeaway is understanding all of those perks changes how you play, essentially your main strategy. Now in this video, we're focusing on the tier 2 perks, and this tier is a little different from the tier 1. While the tier 1 perks give you things like speed, protection, ammunition, stealth, and easier streaks, tier 2 is mostly focused on your weapon. So just like before, I'm going to be focusing on 4 questions. What is this perk? What is the benefits of using it? How should you play without it? And what is the best situations for it? Then I'll give you my opinion on whether or not I think it's worth using. Starting with Harden. What is the Hardened perk? For the base perk, Harden allows you to penetrate walls and objects with deeper bullet impact. And for the pro version, Hardened Pro allows you to inflict extra bullet damage on aircrafts and turrets. And you'll be able to flinch less when shot. So what are the benefits of using this perk? Well, the first benefit is being able to punish players when they think they're safe behind cover. As so you would think, I ran a few bullet penetration tests and the results were unexpected. For my weapon of choice, I wanted to use the M14 because I'll be able to control how many bullets I put into the target. For this first test, I wanted to see how many bullets it takes to kill an enemy, and as a result, it only took 2 shots. Now for this next test, I wanted to see how many bullets it takes to kill an enemy behind the wall. And as a result, it took 3 shots. So it seems like the wall is taking some of that damage, so that's why it's taking more shots to kill your opponent. I also tested the distance behind the cover the enemy stood to see if the damage values changed, and as a result, it still took 3 shots to kill the opponent. I also wanted to test the bullet penetration with other surfaces in the game, just to see if there's any differences in damage. What I found out with the M14 in particular, bloom played a role with certain surfaces. It seems to me with certain surfaces, bloom will cause you to miss your opponent even though you're aiming directly at them. And this is with the Hardened perk, by the way. Now this could also be a fire rate thing because I started to shoot a little faster at the end, but I still think it's a little weird that you're going to have a lot more bloom the slower you shoot. I also wanted to test the deep penetration through multiple surfaces just to see how far the bullets go. For this test, I decided to use Hardened Pro so I could see the C4 through the wall. Although I was accurate, it didn't seem to work until I got closer. So the results of that seemed very inconsistent, but I didn't stop there. I also wanted to test if the same bullet penetration from the same distance can shoot an opponent through the wall. And somehow it did with the same 3 shots. Now here's the weird part. I did the same exact test without Hardened Pro and the results were very similar. I couldn't shoot the C4 through the wall until I got a certain angle and then I was able to shoot it. Then I tested shooting the opponent through the wall, killing them within 3 shots similar to the Hardened perk. I was really confused about these results because I would think that the Hardened perk would give you more damage behind cover, but it seemed to be very similar if not the same. I also wanted to test the sniper to see if the damage is the same behind cover. Since the snipers have more damage per bullet, I wanted to see if it's going to keep that damage behind the cover. And as a result, you're still going to have to shoot your opponent twice through the cover because the cover does absorb some of that damage, unless you get a headshot. So I don't think going prone behind cover is going to be the best idea. I also tested the sniper behind the metal surface and I was able to kill the opponent within 2 shots. Lastly, for this penetration test, I wanted to see if there are certain surfaces you can't shoot through. And as you can see, even with using Harden, you're not going to be able to shoot through these sandbag barriers. I even tried it with the sniper rifle and the results were the same. Next, I wanted to test Hardened Pro's damage to aircrafts. I wanted to see if I'm able to take down a spy plane by myself with the M14. And I wanted to see how many shots it would actually take. During my testing, I was not able to take out the spy plane. Yes, I was missing a couple of shots, but I wanted to use the M14 so I can really dial in on how many bullets that it takes to take down the aircraft. However, I was never able to do it. I also did this with the counter spy plane and I got the same results. So as for shooting these down mid-game, I don't think it's worth it because even with the M14, I wasn't able to take it out with several shots. So you really don't want to be sitting out there shooting at aircrafts while the enemy team is actively hunting you. So I think these particular aircrafts were designed to be taken down by launchers. Maybe if everyone decided to shoot at it at the same time, maybe you can take it down, but in that case, why don't just pull out a launcher? Next, I wanted to test how many bullets it would take to shoot down an attack helicopter without Hardened Pro. Now realistically, without a launcher, if everyone starts to shoot at it, this would be a little more practical. But if you're doing it by yourself, this is not worth it because I used all my ammo and I had to resort using some of the pistol ammo. But again, for this test, I wanted to see how many bullets it would actually take. Maybe if you had an LMG, it could have been a little better, but then again, why would you want to use up all of your ammo? You can also pair it with scavengers so you can replenish your ammo, but pulling out a launcher would just be so much easier. In comparison, I tested it with Hardened Pro and the results really wasn't that different. Yes, I was able to save some ammo, but I don't think it would be worth it. And again, shooting at aircrafts, using up all your ammo and potentially giving away your position to the enemy team, I just don't think it's worth it. And again, if you use an LMG with scavenger or that your whole team decided to take it out at once, it could work, but I don't think it's practical, especially if you're not in a party where you can communicate to your team to all take it out at once. After taking out the attack helicopter, I only saved 14 bullets while using Hardened Pro. Now moving on to the turret, I wanted to see how many bullets it would actually take to destroy a sentry gun without using Hardened Pro. The results of this test were very interesting because the damage I was able to inflict on the sentry gun without Hardened Pro matched the results with Hardened Pro. And it only took me 16 bullets with the M14. So I did the same test with Hardened Pro, and surprisingly, it only took me 15 bullets. So that's not a big difference. After running these tests with the Harden perk, I don't think it's that much of an advantage to use Harden for the bullet penetration. Now I know I didn't test every material and every weapon in the game to show the extent of the bullet penetration with the perk. However, I don't think you're going to be at that much of a disadvantage with just using Harden. But Hardened Pro adds what I think may be the more important benefit, that being reduced flinch. See, whenever somebody shoots at you, your weapon gets kicked off target, which can be a very frustrating experience, but Hardened Pro drastically reduces this effect. So I ran a few tests showing how much Hardened Pro reduces the flinch. In this first test, I wanted to use a pistol to show how much flinch you're going to actually get without using Hardened Pro. Now I wanted to add a starting position line and a highest point line to visually show how much flinch is being applied. Keep in mind, this is a very close range, so at a distance it's going to be much more noticeable. Next, I did the same test with Hardened Pro to see how much Hardened Pro will reduce the flinch. As a result, Hardened Pro significantly reduced the flinch, and as an added benefit, gives you less redness on your screen. So in comparison, the results are drastic, which means at greater distances, this perk can give you a significant advantage by giving you a better chance of staying on target during those gunfights. Now, how do you play without using this perk? Without Harden, just don't rely on wall penetration. Now I understand that the results are very similar, but again, I didn't test out every material in every gun, so just don't rely on it. Just understand that you can shoot through most thin cover, but with thicker cover, you may have an issue. So if somebody disappears behind cover, you may be better off repositioning, throwing equipment, or just waiting on them to expose themselves again instead of wasting ammunition shooting through a surface. And without Hardened Pro, you may need to respect flinch more. If somebody gets the first shot on you at a longer range, trying to force the gunfight isn't always the best decision, especially if you're on the street. Trust me, I've been guilty of this myself. So when that happens, just get behind cover and try not to go prone right under a window because that's going to be easier for the opponent to get a headshot on you. Once you waited for your health to regenerate, you can challenge again, but try to reposition a little so you're not directly in someone's line of sight. You can generally also improve your positioning so you're the player that's getting the first shot more often, because one of the easiest ways to deal with flinch is not getting shot in the first place. Now, what are the best situations for using this perk? Harden works best with assault rifles, light machine guns, and other weapons that can be used at longer ranges. It can also be used on maps with a lot of thin cover and predictable enemy positions. So when a player hides behind cover, you can predict where they're going to go and finish the kill. And Hardened Pro becomes very viable for players who take a lot of medium to long range gunfights. And this could be especially useful if you find yourself losing gunfights just because you got kicked off the enemy target. Now let me answer, is Harden worth using? I think Harden is interesting because the base perk feels very situational. You might go an entire match without intentionally shooting someone through a wall. But Hardened Pro gives you something that can affect almost every gunfight, reduce flinch. So for me, it is worth using. However, you're going to have to upgrade it to the Pro version for it to make sense. Now moving on to our next perk, Scout. What is the Scout perk? For the base perk, it allows you to hold your breath longer when scoped. For the Pro version, Scout Pro allows you to swap weapons faster, and that faster swapping speed also helps with equipment as well. So basically, Scout Pro is primarily designed around sniping, but the Pro ability can have some uses outside of that. Now let's talk about what are the benefits of using this perk. The obvious benefit is having more time to line up a sniper shot. Normally when you hold your breath, you have a limited window before the scope starts moving again. So I wanted to test how long you can hold your breath with and without Scout. For these tests, I used the hold your breath prompt as an indicator. As a result, the full duration without Scout is about 4.50 seconds or 3 heartbeats if you're listening. Now I tested it with the Scout perk and it lasted much longer. And as a result, with Scout, you're nearly able to hold your breath twice as long, or 6 heartbeats if you're listening. That duration can help you with watching a long sightline or waiting for somebody to expose themselves coming from behind cover. It can also help newer snipers who need a little more time to settle their aim before they take the shot. Scout Pro also gives you another useful advantage: faster weapon switching. For a sniper, that can really matter a lot, because if somebody suddenly gets near you, being able to pull out your pistol faster is the difference between surviving and getting killed. It also makes switching back and forth between equipment and weapons feel quicker. So I tested how much faster you switch between weapons and equipment while using Scout. For the first test, I decided to use a claymore to show the difference between planting equipment. As a result, you're going to save about 0.82 seconds. For this next test, I wanted to show the difference with swapping to a launcher. And as a result, you're going to save about 1.97 seconds. That swap speed time can be the difference between staying on a streak or having to respawn. Now let's answer, how do you play without the perk? Well, if you're sniping without Scout, you just need to be more efficient with the time you have while holding your breath. So you don't have to hold your breath as soon as you look through the scope. Find your target first and then start holding your breath. That way you're not wasting limited breath time while trying to search for somebody to shoot. And without Scout Pro, you just need to think ahead before enemies get close to you. If you're sniping and somebody starts to push a position, don't wait until they're standing directly behind you before you pull out your secondary. Be ready, and also have a piece of equipment that lets you know that the enemy is near, like a claymore or a motion sensor. What are the best situations for using this perk? Scout is obviously at its best with sniper rifle, and the longer breath hold can help newer players that struggle with the scope sway. Also, Scout Pro is useful when you're swapping between your secondary weapons or trying to place down equipment much faster. Now the question is Scout worth using? This is probably one of the more specialized perks in the tier 2 lineup. Now if you're not sniping, the base perk doesn't really give you any reason to use it. Even if you are sniping, you're going to be giving up those other perks. So Scout can definitely be useful. It just depends on if you're using a sniper rifle and how you use it. Moving on to the next perk, Steady Aim. What is the Steady Aim perk? For the base perk, Steady Aim allows you to maintain increased accuracy when firing from the hip. For the pro version, Steady Aim allows you to aim faster after sprinting and recover quickly from knife lunges. For the most part, this perk is built around close range combat. So what are the benefits of using this perk? The biggest benefit is being able to fire from the hip more accurately without aiming down sight, and at close ranges that can be a lifesaver. I tested the hip fire spread with and without Steady Aim to see how much of a difference it can actually make. For this test, I wanted to show you a side-by-side comparison of the hit spread. All I did here was hold down the fire button so we can see the entirety of the spread. To make this easier to see visually, I just drew a circle around the diameter of the spread. And as a result, with the Steady Aim, you're going to decrease your hip fire spread approximately by 28%. This tighter hip fire accuracy makes Steady Aim especially useful with weapons that already perform well at close ranges, like the SMGs and the shotgun. And is also great in situations where somebody may surprise you and you don't have time to fully aim down sight. Then Steady Aim Pro makes aggressive movement even stronger. One of the risks of sprinting and rushing around the map is that your weapon isn't immediately ready to fire. So that means if you're sprinting directly into an enemy, they may already have their weapons drawn, while you're still going to be bringing yours up. Steady Aim Pro can shorten that recovery. So I tested the sprint to ADS speed with and without Steady Aim Pro. For these tests, I decided to count the frames instead of doing the time. And without Steady Aim Pro, your sprint to ADS speed is going to be approximately 18 frames. I did the same test with Steady Aim Pro, and your sprint to ADS speed is going to be approximately 11 frames. So this perk generally helps you before and during a gunfight. Now, how do you play without it? Without Steady Aim, you're going to have to rely more on aiming down sights. And if you're about to enter a contested area, stop sprinting before you reach a corner. Get your weapon ready before you enter that engagement. Pre-aiming doorways can also be useful. And also, don't sprint directly into locations where you expect somebody to be waiting. That's probably the biggest alternative to Steady Aim Pro. You also need to have better sprint discipline, which means you don't need faster recovery time if you already have your gun ready. And to be honest, at extremely close ranges, you can still hip fire fire without using the perk. You just can't expect the same consistency. Now, what are the best situations for using this perk? Steady aim is best for aggressive players and close range playstyles. If you're constantly running around the map with an SMG or a shotgun, you're going to get more opportunities to use this perk. It also works well on smaller maps where gunfights are quickly happening and you don't always have time to aim down sights. And Steady Aim Pro makes a lot of sense for players who are constantly sprinting. So that means the more aggressive you are, the more opportunities you have to use the benefits of this perk. So is Steady Aim worth using? For an aggressive close range player, definitely. But if you're already aiming down sights before most engagements, you may not get much value out of using the base perk. And if you're disciplined about your sprinting, you can reduce how important the pro ability becomes. So overall, Steady Aim rewards aggressive playstyles, but if you're already prepared for each fight, you may not have to use it. Let's move on to the next perk, Sleight of Hand. What is the Sleight of Hand perk? For the base perk, Sleight of Hand allows you to reload your weapons faster. For the pro version, Sleight of Hand Pro allows you to aim down your sights faster with weapons except for sniper rifles. So basically this perk improves your readiness when you get into gunfights. So what are the benefits of using this perk? Think about it, everybody has been killed trying to reload, because as soon as you're finished with your gunfight, you hit the reload button, and somehow at that exact moment another enemy decides to come around the corner. Sleight of Hand can help you reduce that runnable window while you're reloading. And faster reloads can help any player who gets into multiple fights quickly. So I tested the reload speed of Sleight of Hand to see how fast it can help you reload. For this test, I wanted to show the reload times with and without Sleight of Hand. And as a result, you're going to save about 1.23 seconds. Now that time is very significant when you're getting into gunfights one after another, especially if you find yourself behind enemy lines or if you're playing free-for-all. Then you have the added benefit of Sleight of Hand Pro, which is to aim down sights faster, which can directly affect your gunfights. So if you and another player see each other at the same exact time, you being able to ready your gun faster and get the first shots can drastically improve the likelihood of you winning that gunfight. So I also tested the ADS speed of Sleight of Hand Pro to see the benefits of having faster aim. For this test, I wanted to compare the aim down sight speed with and without the perk. And as a result, you're going to save about 0.19 seconds. That time difference makes Sleight of Hand Pro useful for pretty much anybody who gets into regular gunfights. Now let's explore how do you play without it. Without Sleight of Hand, you just need better reload discipline, meaning you don't have to reload automatically after each kill. If you still have enough ammo to win another gunfight, sometimes keeping your weapons ready is safer than immediately reloading for a fresh magazine. Also remember to reload behind cover. Make sure you're reloading when the area is clear, and sometimes you can pick up a secondary weapon to have that ready, or you can use an attachment that can help you reload faster, which is the dual mag. Dual mag can help you reload faster and give you additional ammo for certain guns. So I tested the reload times of dual mag to see how fast it is compared to without it. For this test, I wanted to see the reload speeds with and without Sleight of Hand while using dual mag. And as a result, you're going to save about 0.82 seconds. As you can see, Sleight of Hand can save you a significant amount of time, especially if you're using dual mag. And just remember, extended mag can reduce how often you need to reload in the first place. And lastly, without Sleight of Hand Pro, pre-aiming becomes more important, because if your weapon takes longer to aim, you have to get it ready before the enemies appear. Now, what are the best situations for using this perk? Sleight of Hand is very useful for most situations, and it makes the most sense for weapons that have long reload times. It's also useful for aggressive players who constantly get themselves into gunfights. And Sleight of Hand Pro can improve your readiness when getting in those gunfights. So is it worth using? Yes. And I think the biggest reason is consistency. You see, some perks need a specific situation before they become useful. Sleight of Hand can benefit you almost every single life. You're going to have to reload and you're going to have to aim. So the question isn't really whether Sleight of Hand is useful, it's whether another tier 2 perk gives your specific class something you need more. Speaking of more, we're going to be moving on to our next perk, Warlord. What is the Warlord perk? For the base perk, Warlord allows you to equip 2 attachments to your primary weapon, excluding underbarrels. And for the pro version, Warlord Pro allows you to start with 1 extra lethal and tactical grenade, except for repeat. So Warlord affects both your weapon setup and the amount of equipment you start with. Now, what are the benefits of using this perk? The biggest benefit is customization. Instead of choosing between 2 attachments you really like, you can just use both. Maybe your weapon has 1 attachment that fixes a weakness and then another attachment that supports your playstyle. Warlord allows you to combine them, but this perk does have limits of what you can combine. For each weapon and weapon class, you're going to have a certain amount of attachments. And for those attachments, you're going to have different combinations you can actually use. As you can see, if you select 1 attachment and then the other is grayed out, you cannot combine those 2 attachments. And this is the same philosophy throughout all of the weapon classes. And I'm guessing they did this as a balance measure because certain combinations of attachments can be really strong. For instance, they only gave shotguns one attachment each. And I figured they did this because if you give the shotgun multiple attachments, then it could be really strong in this game. So to avoid that, I guess they decided to put one attachment for each shotgun to make them feel a little more unique. So selecting the right attachments can completely change how your weapon feels. So Warlord can essentially let you build a more specialized version of your gun. In addition, Warlord Pro gives you more equipment every life. An extra lethal and tactical grenade can be extremely useful in objective-based game mode. By having more grenades, more concussions, and flashbangs, you have more opportunities to clear objectives before entering. This is great for those opening life pushes for the B flag or just any objective. So how do you play without this perk? Without Warlord, you have to make a decision. Which attachment actually matters the most? Instead of putting 2 attachments on your weapon just because you can, figure out what problem you're having and try to solve it. For instance, if your iron sights are really good, maybe you don't need an optic. If you don't regularly run out of ammo during a gunfight, maybe extended mag isn't necessary. If stealth isn't a part of your playstyle, maybe you don't need a suppressor. So just choose an attachment that gives you the biggest benefit and use your tier 2 slot for something else. And without Warlord Pro, you simply just have to be more selective about how you use your equipment. You see, you don't have 2 grenades to waste, so you have to make the one count, and maybe this is for clearing an objective or extending the streak. So what are the best situations for this perk? Warlord is best on weapons that benefit strongly from having 2 attachments. ARs and SMGs are probably one of the easiest examples because they have several useful combinations. And Warlord Pro becomes especially useful in objective-based game modes because having additional grenades and tactical equipment gives you more tools for attacking and defending a position. So is Warlord worth using? I would say yes, but in cases where your weapon benefits from having 2 attachments, or if you're playing an objective-based game mode where you want to have more equipment so you can attack or defend a position. Now for the final verdict. I just broke down all 5 tier 2 perks, and compared to tier 1 perks, I think this tier creates some really interesting competition. Harden is your penetration and gunfight stability perk. Scout is specialized for sniper rifles. Steady aim is built around aggressive close range fighting. Sleight of Hand improves your overall weapon handling. And Warlord gives you more freedom with building your class. So the biggest takeaway from the tier 2 perks is that it changes how your weapon works around your playstyle. What part of my gun is actually holding me back? And this can vary from player to player. So similar to the tier 1 perks, I don't think there's a perk that fits every class, but I think for an average player, Sleight of Hand Pro would be worth going for because it gives you the biggest benefit from gunfight to gunfight, especially if connection plays a significant role in that match. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys for watching the video, and in the next video we're going to be breaking down the tier 3 perks, thus completing this series. But if you want to watch me break down the tier 1 perks, go check out my previous video where I broke down all of the tier 1 perks using this same format. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like, comment which tier 2 perk do you use the most, or did that change your perspective on how you view these perks? Leave it in the comment section below, and just like always, no stress, do your best, God bless, peace.